Sachas Bava Kamma Daf Kuf Zayin. We begin with the last few lines in Daf Kuvav. The Gemara continues bringing halachos said by Amoraim about the sugya of Toyin Tainas Ganev Bibikadin. That means if Shimon is holding Bikadin for Reuven asks for it back, and Shimon says it was stolen from me, and then Shimon swears to that, and it turns out he was lying. According to most opinions, he had to admit that he was lying. Then he needs to pay kefil. So the Gemara discusses where you have that halacha. So we now brings Rav Chibar Abba Amravechan, and he says that's only if he denied part of it. If he denied all of it, then you wouldn't have the halacha. It's only said where he denies part of it, and he admits the part, which is what we call meida b'miksa. So the reason for this is because the phrase ki hu zeh is written in this pasuk, in this parsha here, in ki hu zeh we have a drasha is a meida b'miksa. Ki hu zeh means that he's admitting that he owes part, and he's arguing on the part. So here he's just saying part of it is here, I'm returning to you, part of it is stolen from me. So the Gemara, this understanding of the pasuk of ki hu zeh is a machlekes between this Rav Chibar Abba Amar Yechanan and Rav Chiya bar Yosef, because he learns it differently. He says the phrase ki hu zeh here is not going in this context. It belongs in a different parsha. It belongs in the parsha of a milva, of a loan, where Reuven lent money to Shimon and asked for it back, and Shimon denies it. And he admits to part of it, then he's chayav shvua. Then he has to swear. So that's what it's referring to. It's not referring to this here. Now it's in the wrong place. So the Gemara says, Rabbah asks, if you want to say it's in the wrong place here, why do you want to put it on milveh? Why do you think it belongs there? Why is mixas irrelevant to milveh? So he explains that when you have a loan, it makes sense that mixas should be a mechayiv yeshua. And the reason is because if somebody lent you money, you don't have the chutzpah to deny the entire thing. He did you a favor, he lent you the money, you're going to deny the whole thing, you can argue with him. This guy really is lying, and if he would have been able to, he would have denied the whole thing. However, he couldn't, so he admitted to part of it. And the reason why he only admitted to part is because he's trying to get the money together until he can actually get a chance to pay for the rest of it. So that is our assumption. That's the umdina of what happens when somebody admits to half. That's a likely scenario. Of course, it could be that it's true, but that's a likely scenario. And that was why he would be lying. And that's why the Torah is mechayiv meshua if he admits to half. Now, that only makes sense in the context of a loan. It doesn't make sense in the context of a bikadon, where the guy didn't do any favor. You're watching his object for him. He didn't lend you money, so there is no problem for you to be mazed. So if you were lying, you would lie fully, and therefore we could be mechayiv yeshua even in that situation. Now, the Gemara adds, Bava Kamma also holds you need to have meida b'miksa, so he spells it out, and he says that it has to be in all four shomrim, and he wants to show a limud for each of them. So the pasuk of ki hu zeh is written by a shomer chinam. Shomer sachar follows in the order of the psukim, and about there it says nesina, and it says nesina by shomer chinam also, so there's a gzera between the two. That's how you learn from one to the other. Shail is next. There it starts with a vav v'chi yishal that adds it to what comes before, and you learn that halacha also it needs to be meida b'mixas, and a seicher is a machlekes tanaim if a seicher has the halacha b'shem rechinam or shem sachar, whichever it is, shem rechinam and sachar, both have this halacha that they need to be meida b'mixas according to Bava Kamma, and therefore you learn that halacha to them as well. Gemara now brings the next halacha about a toyin tainas ganav, is Rav Chiya bar Yosef, and he says it has to be that he was sholeach yad, that he used the pikadon. It was supposed to be watching and not using, he used it. Then when he denies it, and he says that it got stolen from him, and then he admits that he was lying, then he has to pay kefil. But if not, then he does not have to pay a kefil. What's the source? So the pasuk previous to this discussion in the psukim says lo yishalach yad. We're talking about where he wasn't shalach yad. That's where yipater. What follows, where he's chayiv shua and he has to pay kefel, that's talking about by inference. That's referring to where he was shalach yad. This is Rav Chiya bar Yosef and Rav Yechanan. The Gemara says Rav Chiya bar Abba. It's in the name of Rav Yechanan. No, we're talking about where he was not shalach yad. The Gemara calls it Omedes al avusa. He's standing by the feeding trough of the animal, assuming the pikadon was an animal, and that is where he has to swear. If he swears falsely, he pays kefil when he was not shalach yad. So Zera asked to Rav Chiya bar Abba, only when he wasn't shalach yad. If he was shalach yad, you don't have to pay kefil, or even you're saying that in both cases, whether you're shleich yad or not, you have to be kefil. And what's it said that if you're shleich yad, you would not have to be kefil, only when you're not shleich yad? So I would say if it was shleich yad, if he used it, so then he stole it at that moment. He became a gazlan. He's not a ganef anymore. He's a gazlan now, and therefore he's putter from kefil. The time he actually has a kinyan geneva, and the time that he swears falsely, it's about his own already. Of course, he still owes. He still has to return it because he stole it, but he's not swearing falsely about a object that belongs to someone else anymore. At this point, it belongs to him. So that was the question. What would Rabbi say in a situation where he was shalech yad? Would he say that you have to pay a kefil there or not? So Rav Chia bar Abba answered, I didn't hear anything about that. Whoever heard something similar, which I think is a raya. What's the raya? We have a Maimer of Rav Asi named Rav Yechanan. This is the following scenario. The Reuven says, Shimon, where's my epikadon? Shimon says it got lost. So he's a Shemachinam. He has to swear that it got lost. If he swears, then he's pater. Of course, there's no issue of kefil here because it's only if he's swearing that it got stolen. Then he changed his taina and he said, no, it got stolen. And then he swore. And then witnesses came and said that it was swearing falsely. So now the question is, does he have to pay kefil now? And the halacha is pater, he does not have to pay kefil. Says the Gemara, what's the reason? It must be because when he swore falsely the first time that it got stolen, he became a gazlan on it. He was claiming it kinyan gzela, and therefore it's just like your case where he's claiming kinyan gzela by being shalech yad, and he's pater because he's claiming kinyan gzela, and you don't pay kefil when you're claiming kinyan gzela. So therefore it's a raya that you would not, in the case of shalech yad, you would not have to pay kefil. So the Gemara says no, it's not the reason. It's not because he's claiming kinyan gzela. It's because there's no longer a chiv shvua. You only have to be careful if you swear something when there's a chiv shvua. When you go to Beis Din, and Reuven says, "Where's my thing?" and he swears that it got lost, so that's it. He's yet to the bit. The case is over. Later, when he volunteers that he stole it and he swears to that, that's a voluntary shvua. That's not the shvua. That's mechayev kefil, and that's why that's the only one that could be because that's where he says it got stolen. The first one can't because he said it got lost. The second one can't either because he wasn't mechayev that shvua. And therefore, that's why there is no chiyev kefil here. Now, the Gemara brings Rav Sheshes. His halacha is that someone who is tayin is ganav pikadain. If he was shleich yad, he's pater. In the case of shleich yad, where he did use it, he's pater. There is no kefil on that. What's the reason? Because again, the same pasuk we said before, where it says, that's only referring to a case of lo shalach yadai. That's where nikra b'albais came. Not in contrast to that, but in that case specifically of lo shalach yadai, that's where there's a parasha of kefil. If there is shlichus yad, he's pater. So the Gemara says, Rav Nachman asked, when he swears, he has to swear to three things. He has to swear that he wasn't posheya in it, that even if it got stolen, if he was posheya, it was negligent allowing it to get stolen, he'd be chayav for it anyway, as a shemachinam. He has to swear that he wasn't posheya. He also has to swear that he didn't use it, that there was no shlichus yad, and he has to swear that he's not holding on to it himself, and it's not in his rishus somewhere. So Gemara says these three shvuas should have the same halachas, just like the shvua of that it's not in my rishus if it's false, he's lying, and he is the thief himself. That's what you pay kefil. So should also have to pay kefil if you swore falsely to the shvua shalei shalachti bayad. Means that he was shalech yad. He should pay a kefil just for that, just for swearing falsely to that shvua. So one says no. The third shvua is for sure not like that. The third shvua shalei pashati, if he was posheya, he definitely doesn't have to pay kefil because he's not a ganaf then, he's a posheya. So there clearly it's not that way. The shvua of shalei shalachti bayad is like that as well. Both cases, if it's found to be false, there is no kefil for that.